Hey there, seventh graders. Wanted to give you some helpful hints for Unit 3 for each lesson. So here we go. All right, so first of all, poetry. Poems, I know a lot of you probably don't like poetry, but think of it as music. It's the building blocks of music. So if you like music, you have to be a poet in order to be a musician, really, if you're going to be a modern day musician. So just think of it that way. Also realize that poetry should be read out loud because it's the way that it sounds that makes it unique from every other kind of writing. Okay, so one thing to know is that poems are arranged in lines and stanzas, not like a book. Books and novels and essays are arranged in sentences and paragraphs, right? So poetry is different. We call them lines and stanzas. So if you look at this example down below, it's an example here. We've got 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that group of lines is what we call a stanza. So a stanza is simply a group of lines. Again, poetry should sound like music. And in most cases, not all, but in most cases, poetry has a certain beat. Some does not, which we'll see in a few lessons later. But most poetry does have some kind of rhythm, just like music does. So what you'll see a lot is they talk about stressed and unstressed syllables. Stressed syllables simply mean where you hit a word harder than another word. Best way to see that is through an example. So let's look at this example here. Oops. It says, some say the world will end in fire. Let me read that again, but this time I'm going to clap it out. Some say the world will end in fire. Did you notice that I clapped on the bold words? That's because those words I hit a little harder than the other ones. In poetry, it should have sort of a da-na, 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 da-na type of beat. Again, not all, but this is what we call iambic meter. It's the most commonly used type of poetry meter. And it's what makes poetry special and unique. All right, in your novel studies, you've done this, but figures of speech, poets use a lot of figurative language to invoke your imagination. So similes, those use like or as to compare two things or more. So for example, her smile is like a ray of sunshine. That simile puts an idea in your mind of how big and happy her smile is. Now, a metaphor is very similar. It compares two or more things, not using like or as. It says something is another thing. So let's look kind of at that same type of example here. Her smile is a ray of sunshine. So saying literally that her smile is sunshine. Almost the same thing, just a small little difference. All right. Then you've got sounds in poetry. The first word right here is called alliteration. And that is when several words in a line begin with the same letter. And here's an example here. Peter Piper picks tons of peppers. In that example, there's several words that begin with the letter P. That's what we call alliteration. All right, let's look at the next thing, assonance. Assonance is when several words in a line have the same vowel sound, not at the beginning, just in the word. So A, E, I, O, or U sounds. Like this example, I might try to get it right. It's about the sound, not the spelling. So in that example, we have the repeated long I sound. I might try right. Okay, that's assonance. And then consonance is kind of similar, but that's when several words in a line have the same consonant sound. So anything that's not a vowel. And here's the example. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain. In that, there's a couple different consonant sounds repeated. We've got the S in silken, sad, uncertain rustling, the S sound. There's also the sound. Uncertain rustling of each purple curtain. Okay. That's just a way that poets try to make their writing sound a little bit more musical, again, since they don't have instruments. All right, allusion. Allusion is a lot like a simile or a metaphor. However, it compares something to a well-known character or place from a novel or a movie. That's what an allusion is. So it says it can be a person, place, or object from a cultural point of view or a literary. So again, let's look at examples. That's the best way to figure this out. So an example of an allusion would be this. Mike lifted the beam with the strength of Superman. So it's a metaphor. It's saying that he's strong like Superman, right? But because it's actually comparing to a famous, well-known character, Superman, that's what we call an allusion. Another example of illusion would be this one. She cackled like the Wicked Witch. Right? The Wicked Witch is in The Wizard of Oz. She's also in the novel The Wizard of Oz. So that would be another example of an allusion to a well-known literary or book or movie character. Okay, rhyme scheme. Now, how do you know if a poem rhymes? Look at the last word in each line. That's really all you have to look at is just the last word. So let's look at this Robert Frost example here. This is from Design. And I'm not even going to read this poem because to figure out rhyme scheme, like I said, you just look at the last word in each line. So in this line, in line 1, it ends with the word white. Now, the way you figure out rhyme scheme is, no matter what, the first line is what we're going to call rhyme A. We start at the beginning of the alphabet, where we start at the beginning of the poem. So no matter what, the last word in that line, we call that rhyme A. And then you move down to line 2 and look at the last word, moth. Now, white and moth, those two do not rhyme. So because they don't rhyme, we can't call that another rhyme A. So we move down the alphabet and say, well, that's going to be rhyme B. It's really just a way to label your poem. Okay, so we've got white is A, moth is B, cloth. Now we've got a rhyming. Moth and cloth, those two rhyme. So we're going to label that one with a matching rhyme to rhyme B. Those are both a B rhyme, off, off. All right, moving down to line 4. Blight. Now that rhymes with white. So we've got another matching pair. Rhyme A is the ite rhyme. So we've got A, B, B, A. That's what we call the rhyme scheme. This is an A, B, B, A rhyme scheme. And the reason that that's important is more to try to figure out what the poet was trying to do when they built the poem. Because when you write poetry, you have to have a rhyme scheme if you want it to rhyme at all. You have to have a plan. That's really what rhyme scheme is. It's like a schematic. It's a plan. It's the kind of the foundation or the scaffolding that you build a poem on. So if you go, well, I want an ABBA poem, then that means I need the first line and the fourth line to rhyme and the second and third lines to rhyme. If you keep working your way down this poem, we've got all these matching rhymes, white, blight, right. So those are all A rhymes. And we've got 4 B rhymes, moth, cloth, broth, froth. So those are all B's. Okay, last thing, symbolism. So we've talked about this too in novel studies. Symbolism means simply, and universal symbols are something that everyone pretty much agrees if you see it, it might stand for something. So it's a symbol or an image that stands for another thing. And poets a lot of times use symbols to represent another meaning. For example, in Fire and Ice, it's not really talking about fire and it's not really talking about ice when you read that poem. Same thing with another Robert Frost poem when he talks about sleep. He's not really talking about sleep. So if you come across something and it talks about a heart or a red rose, usually those symbolize some kind of love, everlasting love or romantic love. A clover, four-leaf clover, we think of like St. Patrick's Day and good luck. Rings, I think of marriage and commitment and loyalty. An American flag, often that symbolizes freedom. And a green light, well, I think of green light as meaning go, right? Opposite of stop. So those are just some silly examples of symbols that we pretty much worldwide agree upon. And what you're going to look for in poems is other common symbols. So when you read a poem, don't just read the words. You have to look a little bit beyond just the words and try to think, what could that word actually really mean? All right, that's it for this little video. On the next study guide, I'll have another helpful hints video for that lesson. So stay tuned. See ya.